Hey everybody, this is Kofi Kankam. Welcome to our last webinar of the year. I'm one of the co-founders of Admit Advantage, and as usual, we're super excited to be working with Beat the GMAT. So this is an important webinar for those of you that are both on your way to being accepted and having to think about kind of what comes next after you've been accepted yet before you matriculate. For those of you that unfortunately will not get in, and starting to think about, okay, what do you need to do big picture-wise to prepare for your next attempt, hopefully next summer. So I want to talk about that a little bit. All of you will notice that you're on mute. It's not because we don't want to hear your beautiful voices, but it's just a way for us to keep sort of the sound down. If you have specific questions, recognize that I will get to all the questions I can at the end. If it's really pressing, you can just type it in, and I will try to address it in the course of the webinar. But typically, we try to just sort of go all the way through, okay? So we're going to speak about a little bit on the company, just if you're comfortable that we're qualified to speak on these things, and then we'll discuss sort of the meat of the webinar, and then we'll talk about if you're looking for help. And I'm going to introduce sort of something new that we've launched, which I think will be pretty compelling for hopefully a lot of you. So we work with candidates all the way through their initial interest in business school to acceptance. So typically people come to us at the beginning and say they need help developing strategy and thinking of the correct stories and experiences, as well as the leadership characteristics from which to build their application, all the way through to the end when candidates are accepted and they have to make decisions about which school to attend, or they're trying to figure out how to get one school, the school they really want to attend, to give them more free grant or scholarship money versus another school where they're accepted that gave them more money. So it's really sort of those two extremes and everything in between. Our company is going to have a very structured process. The two of us that founded the company are former science guys. We really believe that in a day and age where most people applying are qualified, yet only a small subset are going to accept it, it's really important to be thorough, and you really should be systematic in your analysis of that. And then obviously we've been blessed to have really good consultants who are alums of top-tier schools. We believe in heavily training them, as well as having them represent the variety of interests that all of you have. So fields like finance, marketing, government, tech, consulting, entrepreneurship, and a slew of others are represented, and which indicate fields that a lot of you want to go into and or fields from which you're hailing. There are three core tenets underlying our company, which are really critical towards everything we do in terms of our corporate culture. That's experience. So all of us are alums of top-tier schools. We all have been through a pretty rigorous process in terms of getting this job. I guess, the founders is a little bit different, but essentially there's heavy training, it's heavy continual training, and most of us have been on admissions committees, so either second-year interviewers, alumni interviewers, or a few people in admissions post-school. So we've been on both sides of the table. We're known to have a very deep client focus. We sort of consider ourselves the Zappos of this space. We take calls at all times of the day, including Christmas. We're pretty focused on helping people out and making sure they make this next step and developing a really good relationship, because it makes it easier for our clients to feel comfortable talking to us and then perform it. So at the end of the day, all this is meaningless if people are not accepted into top-tier programs. And we've been very fortunate to work with good people and have, we think, a really good process and help get people into all these schools represented below. So we've got literally people on campus in all of these places. And this is actually not, it's a representative set, it's not an entire set or complete. I am Kofi. I've seen a lot of you on Beat the GMAT, and I've tried to answer a lot of your questions, but essentially Eric and I are both friends from Wharton. I have worked at Accenture, Net2Phone. I sold a software company coming out of school. Eric went up to me and sold one coming in. So he's actually one of the few people in these MBA programs that actually sold a company as a real sort of defined entrepreneur coming in. We both have been, undergraduate and graduate interviewers and recruiters for our schools. I did my undergraduate degree at Harvard College, stayed for a grad degree in neurobiology. As I mentioned, I met Eric at Wharton, where I was a Wharton Fellow, ran the Whitney Young Conference, which is Wharton's largest student conference, and served as a marketing teaching assistant. Eric had a very similar background at Brown. He majored in engineering. He also was a Twiga Fellow, which at the time was a full ride, and was really academically distinguished at Wharton as well, graduating with honors. We've got a number of top-tier consultants from all the schools and organizations mentioned here. You can see more of them online on the website. Okay, that'll be it. So if you want more about the company, check it out online. Otherwise, let's talk. So, it's interesting. So some of you right now are in the decision-making process because you have applied in round one, and now you're sitting here having to make a call fairly soon. Most of you have been notified. You applied in round one, you've either found out or you're about to find out by the end of this week. But essentially, you've got to begin to make a decision, right? So you've got to think about, okay, what are your goals? How do they map from the short term and long term? So a lot of you will think about what your short-term goals are in terms of the first job or two you're going to get out of business school, but it's really a longer-term play. And the first key step is thinking about how your goals, short and long-term, map to what the school is bringing to the table or where their assets. So you've got to look at where the schools put their graduates, both from a geographical and a professional viewpoint. You've got to think about, leveraging the career service office, looking at their stats now, going potentially visiting the school if you can't get them online. And then basically, again, really focus on the specific kinds of companies. You're not typically going to find every company that maybe you want to work for recruiting at a school, but you should be able to get a pretty good feel for who they recruit. And frankly, are they adding new companies every year? So if I were in your position, I'd be looking at a school, where they placed the class of 2013 or 2014, and then looking at sort of what they did in 2012, 2013, 2011, et cetera. Right? So seeing if that list has grown or changed as the economy has changed. Okay, this is obviously a great time to visit schools. We recognize that a lot of the schools offer accepted students weekends, and we definitely think you should attend during this period. But you really should also go during a period where there isn't the fanfare, where they're not putting out, all the good-looking people, all the great professors. You should go during a typical day, typical weekday. Typically Wednesday or Thursday is a great time. Wednesday into Thursday is a great time to go because Thursday most schools have pub or beer blast or something social where you can get a feel for the culture of the students outside of the classroom. If you have classes that you want to attend, you either can go through a specific club, reach out online. Let's say you want to be an entrepreneur, you can go to reach out to an entrepreneurship club, ask them to put you in a class and go to a class with a specific student. Or if you have a friend that's at these schools, you can kind of leverage them in that sense. But you should try to get a class visit when you actually go up and attend the school. Okay. I do recommend that you speak to both first years and second year students. Again, you can do this through the clubs, through student government, et cetera. First years typically, especially at this point, they haven't been on campus that long, right? So they will have a lot of enthusiasm. They will know of new initiatives. But the second years are the ones that have the perspective, right? And they've got the perspective of not just being there more time, but also having been involved in the school and seeing how the schools help them with regard to performance during their summer internship. They'll have that kind of feel, and typically they're a little less kind of, rah-rah, drinking all the Kool-Aid of a particular school. You get a more nuanced opinion. So you should speak to both of them. And then, at this point, when you're accepted, you are a member of the community, so you should be reaching out to alumni and asking them their perspective on how the schools help prepare them, what the alumni network's like now, how many people they stay in touch with. You just get a feel for that. If you have these kinds of discussions and analysis, you'll get a pretty good feel for whether or not school's a good fit for you. And hopefully you've got choices, so it's not a school you have to go to. Okay? It's also time for you to manage that money. It's really, really important. As I won't name the title, but there is a famous movie that says, show me the money, and also, don't, make that money and let the money make you, right? So this is when you need to save, okay? So you need to be prepared for no salary and realize that, if you borrow more money, most schools will allow you to borrow a ton of money. That's going to limit your future flexibility, meaning, you may want to start a company, you may want to go work for a startup, you may want to, do something in the government. You may want to do something soon after school, which is not going to guarantee you a huge amount of salary. If you've borrowed a lot of money, you're probably going to have to stay working, a little bit longer. Maybe it's an opportunity that's time sensitive. So be prepared, save your money. There will be an urge to basically just go crazy and go, backpack and spend a ton of money going through Europe or Australia, et cetera. Just be prepared, okay? think about potentially scaling back, how you're living. So maybe you're not going out quite as much. Maybe you're sort of, you're not buying quite as expensive things. I think it's also just very good discipline to get in that habit of realizing you're not going to have a ton of money. And, sometimes you find that students that have lived in major cities and have great jobs, they find it difficult to kind of scale back. And you kind of see these people second semester, first year, and, things can be a little tight financially. So just be prepared by taking those steps like now, so you're not doing sort of a crash diet. And just realize that you've got, more expenses than just tuition, right? You've got housing you've got to take care of for. Some of you will have to update your wardrobes. I definitely was in that position. I probably still am. There will be work-related travel in terms of doing interviews. There also might be, immersion programs that you want to, or dedicated interviewing period trips. So you might be going overseas. You're going to need money for that. And then there's obviously socials, like going out, buying drinks, dinners, et cetera. You're going to need more money than your tuition would suggest that you need, okay? Make sure you're also searching. So once you're accepted, there's a whole slew of financial opportunities available to you that a lot of students don't take advantage of. So consider looking for fellowships from outside organizations. So sometimes the schools will let you know. So for example, we had a woman that was coming from fashion, one of our candidates that was accepted to Harvard. And Harvard Business School had an alum who set aside $20,000 for about 15 or 20 incoming students that were coming from fashion. And so, this candidate didn't know about that until she asked the school about it. And they said, oh, yeah, actually, we do have this. And, $20,000 is not a huge amount of money relative to, your other expenses, but it definitely helped. And so this candidate was able to get that. So you may find fellowships affiliated with not just a school, but also a particular field of interest or background that you're coming from or going to. Also, there are other outside organizations. We've listed a couple here for both women and minorities and a whole slew of athletes, et cetera, groups like Forte, Twigo, et cetera, that will offer fellowships that you can cobble together and can be quite meaningful in terms of that kind of contribution. And also, reach out to some of the firms that you want to work for. So we had a good friend, we being the founders, Eric and I, we had a good friend who went to Wharton with us and got accepted, and then basically was tapped to apply for Goldman Fellowship and got a Goldman Fellowship, which basically paid for his entire 2 years and also gave him a job when he graduated. So just be aware of these things. Look to those corporations. Don't wait for your school to tell you. Reach out to the corporation specifically. And then this is obviously a good time, since you're leaving your company, now's a good time to make them aware, if you haven't already, that you're actually going to school, and potentially you'd consider coming back if they'll reimburse you. So typically what happens is they will pay for your schooling. If they do it, they will pay for it provided that you work for 2 or 3 years after school. And frankly, that may be a place you want to work anyway. So it might be something to consider, okay? So save, search, the last thing is scheme. And I don't mean scheme in a negative sense, but I mean, there's a little bit of a hustling mentality that you have to have. Sometimes you'll get money from one school that maybe isn't your first choice, but your second choice is giving you money. You really should be calling or sending a letter to that top choice saying, look, I'd love to go to your school, but I've received money from another school. I want to be an entrepreneur. I've got other family responsibilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Can you somehow increase your offer? Now, that's not to say that they're going to match it, but you'll find that sometimes they will do that. So we had a candidate about 3 years ago that was accepted to NYU, where they were giving him about a 70% ride and Kellogg, and he had no money at Kellogg. And he wrote a letter to Kellogg indicating what I just said. He wanted to be an entrepreneur. He was married. His wife, he had to move his wife. She wasn't going to be able to find a job, et cetera. And Kellogg ended up giving him about $30,000, $15K a year. Okay, and he did go to Kellogg. So realize that you need to do that, and you need to find a way to be confident without being cocky. So you don't want to write these letters indicating you're entitled, but you do want to write letters to them, let them know. And in fact, we just posted something on our Facebook page of one of our properties, facebook.com/admitme, in which we wrote about a recent Business Week article where top-tier schools have been competing to get people, and they have been throwing offers back and forth on them. It's almost like a a prize fight to see who could sort of win some coveted candidates. So just realize schools are doing this to the point where they're much more open about it now, okay? Get your house established. So get that nest established, meaning find a place, okay? Finalize it early. If you need a roommate, get one. Don't wait till the last second, you know. Most schools now, there'll be someone in your class which sets up a Facebook page or a LinkedIn page for all the people who have been accepted. Start making those connections now, because oftentimes if you wait, you might be stuck with someone that you don't like, or you may have differences of opinion in terms of where you want to live, the rent you want to pay, et cetera, et cetera. So start working on it early, especially if you're around one applicant. Take advantage of the fact that you've got sort of first dibs on people and potentially real estate. So move quickly, okay? It's also a good idea to find a roommate that's got similar career objectives so you can practice. So the classic example is people that are potentially going to a consultant. It's nice to have a roommate that you can run some of these case interview mock interviews with, as opposed to having to get out, go to someplace on campus, find another person outside your apartment. It's good to be able to do that. Just share notes, share second years you've spoken to. That'll be a good idea, okay? And make sure you kind of consummate the deal in terms of getting the lease signed. We've seen people that have basically thought they had a place, and someone came in later and just said, I'm willing to sign it, I'll put down a deposit, and they've had the place scooped up, and these candidates then have to live in less desirable options when they hit campus initially, right? Most schools have some kind of network or platform. So, at Wharton, they have something called student-to-student. It's a great way to sort of potentially find a place without putting down a deposit. It's a great way to find furniture for your apartment, your new place. So I definitely would look to do that. You can get some good advice on a great place to live, what you need to think about, crime, et cetera, et cetera. And again, speak to first and second years. You'll sort of hear that mantra a couple of times, right? So, ask them what you're missing, right? Like, for example, you may choose to live close to campus, but you may find that a lot of the social activities happen somewhere else. So we had people in our Wharton class, actually one of whom we just saw this week, who lived very close to campus, maybe a couple blocks away, but she was like numerous blocks away from Center City, which is where most of us socialized, and that was a little bit of a hassle for her, okay? And consider also, when you speak to second-year students, you may be able to take over their houses. Sometimes they've got leases that go for the whole year, and they're obviously going to be out in May or June, so you may be able to sort of jump in and take over that lease. Realize that when you get accepted into a top-tier school, it doesn't matter, really any school, it doesn't matter if it's like Stanford or Columbia or Austin or Wharton or Harvard, whatever, you got into school, you didn't get a job yet, right? And the reality is you were just beginning to compete. Getting into school is just an opportunity to be in the room where the opportunity is. You still need to really aggressively go after that opportunity. So you've got to make sure that you know what you want to do now, okay? So what you want to do now doesn't have to have any bearing to what you wrote in your application. It doesn't matter, but what matters is you have a pretty good idea of what it is, okay? You need to have a career focus by the time you hit campus, so you need to realize that now is the time to begin having conversations with people in different fields, doing days on the job, taking them out for a cup of coffee, et cetera, et cetera. Now's the time to do that because companies are going to be on campus quite early. You'll find they're typically there by the end of your sort of pre-term or foundations, whatever it's called, for the first 2 or 3 weeks on campus. Companies will be there in September. And if you just sort of pop up in October saying, I finally realized I want to work at McKinsey or I want to work at Google, and they've been there 3 or 4 times beforehand, you're going to be working from a disadvantage. So make sure that if you can, you take the time and use it well now to begin having those discussions and make that analysis about what makes most sense for you. Okay. Again, speak to first and second year students as well as other people who have been accepted, right? So, sometimes candidates don't realize that there's a great resource in people, your classmates, right? People that are going with you, because oftentimes they've been in your industries or your companies that you're considering, and they also have contacts. And so oftentimes they're willing to help you if you're willing to help them, either with your own set of contacts or industries or people that they should be linked up with. So definitely do that. Realize that the people that are going to a top-tier business school come from company X are typically, really well thought of at that company. So, if you can get a sort of an intro, you can make them look good because, oftentimes when they leave a company, the company isn't super thrilled about it, but if you can help them bring in someone who is a really talented person, i.e. you can make them look like a hero, and it'll be really good for you as well, right? First-year candidates are good in that, they know the recruiting coordinators, right, for internships, and they're pretty engaged with the outreach to them, right? So first years right now are just getting into the interview game, but they've already been talking to recruiters, and second years for, they've been talking to them for months. And by the time a lot of you apply around 2 will get in, it'll be March, these first years will have locked in their opportunities. So they're definitely good people to talk to. Second years are also good too in that they've got experience and they have a little bit of clout. If they've received an offer especially, they've got a little bit of juice, and typically second years are actually asked who are the best first years on campus. So that's how much they're respected, and they can give you that perspective on what it's actually like to work in firm X, as opposed to a first year who just is enthusiastic about it but actually hasn't done it as an MBA student, right? A new thing that's happened in the last couple of years has been a pre-MBA internship. We think it's actually pretty interesting. This is a good thing to do if you want to build up some business experience as well as potentially make some cash. You can get you can sort of build great relationships with people in the industry, and you can allow you to ask dumb questions. So we've seen a number of people do a month to 6 weeks, 8 weeks of a pre-internship. They go in. We've had people actually have offers, off the table, because typically firms don't allow you to do this, but they've had offers for an internship coming out of a pre-MBA internship. So it might be something you consider, especially if you're looking at 2 different industries. You might pick one industry, try it out, and now at least you know if it's something you want to pursue, or if not, you're going to focus your efforts wholeheartedly on the other industry. Work on your relationships early, okay? So there's nothing worse than being in business school. I can tell you from having been this kind of person where you're interacting with someone, you're just looking over your shoulder, right? They're trying to get to the next person, just because sometimes they don't have time, and they're trying to figure out who's who. So, work on your relationships now, right? Interact with other accepted students, try to add value. This is not a place where you're just taking. Add value to their relationships, link them up with other people, with other resources, take people to coffee with other accepted students, find out about their jobs and goals, and gain some new contacts. I think it's a great time of year to be thinking about this. Maybe it's something you do next year where you say, look, every other week I'm going to meet with a new accepted student, right? And that's something that's manageable. So you go into school, having basically 6 to 12 new people that you've met with and built a relationship with, especially because when you go to school, often you're sliced and diced into different blocks and sections and cohorts, and it's a great way for you to know people outside of your immediate sphere of contact, right? It's a great time to help organize events in your city. So reaching out to the school, sometimes the schools will actually give you budget, and you can be the person that helps organize social events in your city, and it's a great way to sort of get a name for yourself, okay? You also could, actually even go a step further and maybe do it around career interests, and that's a great way potentially to begin to build a relationship with not just the school people. You may be able to invite a firm that you want to work for that will come to an event in your city and begin to socialize with the candidates, right? I think another thing that people don't consider doing is going to some of these conferences. So, every single club on campus, for the most part, will have a conference for which prospective students and recently accepted students are welcome to attend. So go to those events. You can meet other students, you can meet other applicants, and it's also a great way if you have recommenders that are trying to get their name out. It's a great way to sort of recommend that they join a panel, right? Put them on a panel, and oftentimes they're excited by that. It's a great way to say thank you. So if you did not get in, you cry, right? So you mourn a little bit, then get ready to fight, okay? So the first thing, if you're not getting, you got to look at your weaknesses, right? And so you need to be critical about this. I'm surprised at how often we talk to people that don't get into school. They call us afterwards. We actually had to create a package. There were so many people calling us that we hadn't worked with. We created a DING package, a denied candidate analysis package. I'm surprised how often we speak to them and they just don't have the profile to get into these schools, and they're shocked they didn't get in, right? That's what's shocking to me. So, take a look at your grades. Be really analytical, be honest, critical about it. Look at your GMAT, look at your work experience, the quality of it, the duration of it, and look at your leadership, i.e. your activities. Were you a leader, or were you sort of more of just a member/follower, right? Those are the 4 areas you should really take a hard analysis hard analytical look at. We obviously have this package. I definitely recommend you take a look. Hopefully a lot of you won't have to use it, but it's pretty helpful, so use it if you need to. But be critical and be honest in your assessment. You've got to make amends to improve your standing, so it's not enough to just know that you're weak in these areas. If you have bad grades, consider taking classes in accounting, stats, finance, or economics. If you have a bad GMAT, take it again. Take the GRE. Work, really make sure that you're focused. Try to get promoted leadership. Look at your clubs and organizations, and instead of just being a member, try to take a leadership role within them. Okay. Your recommenders are going to be tricky. Some of you will have to use them again, and obviously they put time in. They can often be a little bit embarrassing when you don't get in. So just go to them and be honest. Indicate what you think went wrong, right? So they don't want you don't want to go and say, I didn't get in, I don't know what the hell happened. That's not a good place to be. Make sure you have sort of a theory on kind of what happened. Give them an idea of a plan for how you're gonna improve it. Thank them for writing a recommendation, and try to build a place where it's like you're going to be analytical. You're going to think about things, but carve a space where you can tell them, look, I may come back to you to sort of write my recommendation. I still feel really good about my candidacy. I'm not deterred. I'm not discouraged, and I'm going to come back and sort of create that space. And do not blame them. Whatever you do, do not necessarily at that point say, I want to see my recommendation and kind of give an indication you think they torpedoed your candidacy. Okay. In terms of schools, you want to maintain interest, so go visit the school early. Go to an event if you can, and speak to admissions officers. Say, look, I didn't get in. I'm still really interested. I'm going to make myself a better candidate. Be humble. Be humble and eager. That may have been something that didn't go well on your first time through. So a lot of times people think they're applying to top-tier schools, and they create sort of an air of entitlement, or they sort of puff out their chest a little bit too much in different ways, and schools don't like that. So a dose of humility, coupled with eagerness, can go a long way towards helping you the next year. And then if you're going to apply early. So if you didn't get in this year, apply in round one. It shows your preparedness. It shows your eagerness. There are also more spots available. We've seen candidates not get in round one or round two, and they apply in round two the next year. I always wonder why they're doing that and not going earlier. Like, send the signal that you're ready, prepared, unless, with the caveat being, if you have like some kind of work promotion or something that's going to happen, say between October and January of the next year, then it may make sense to sort of wait for round two. But otherwise, you should apply round one. Timing, I think most of you know, we're in the round two period, meaning round one is passed, you're waiting for decisions. Round two is typically, the first and second week of January. Round three you really want to avoid, unless obviously there are 4 rounds, but round three typically you want to avoid, okay? There's early decision, there's early action, and obviously there are opportunities potentially to go part-time or executive. So, but typically for most of you, you're looking at round two deadlines. It's kind of tight. I was just speaking to someone actually before I hopped on here and was asking about our availability. We're available, but, come earlier than later. We want to be able to help people. So if you're thinking about getting help, get help sooner than later. Okay, don't wait till the last second and say, "Oh God, now I realize I need help," because we're not going to be able to help you in the way that we'd love to, in terms of being super thorough and giving you a chance to respond to things and come back. So if you need help and it's getting to the witching hours, reach out soon. Okay. We have a new platform called Admit Me, which we're super excited about. We heard a lot of you in the last couple, not you personally, but in the last couple of years, people spoke to us and said, we want something where we can interact with other people. I want a way to sort of, where it's cheaper, it's free. I want to talk to other applicants, want to link up with current students. And Admit Me basically was born out of those numerous discussions. So we're really pleased to launch. We just launched it last month. We have a number of people on already. And again, it's free. It's a real free, the real capital F. So get on it. It's in a beta phase. There are definitely lots of improvements, but we want to hear your feedback. So jump on it. It gives you so many benefits, right? Interact with other people. We'll be on there, accessing your application from anywhere, et cetera, okay? And if you do it and you tell 5 of your friends, it's kind of Scout's Honor, we'll give you a well, it's not really Scout's Honor, so we'll actually check, but we'll give you a 25% discount on all AdmitAdvantage.com services, okay? We have a number of package options. I won't go through all of them, but basically, comprehensive and streamlined. Comprehensive might be difficult right now for multiple schools. We've got streamlined. We have final review. We got targeted services. So basically, if you have 250 bucks or more, we are trying to figure out how to help you. Admit Me is a free version, so we're happy we're at that solution, but I definitely go to the website and take a look at all of our offerings. If you didn't get in and you kind of want help, trying to figure out what happened last year, now you're saying, God, I need to get ready, reach out, take a look at the website, and we will do that. There are lots of things we've got going on. We're on Facebook. Find us on Facebook.com/AdmitMe, Twitter at AdmitMe, our blog. If you still need help with your test prep, we work at Prince Riving. We can get you a 15% discount. And if you want to talk about how we can help you, sign up at flexbooker.com/AdmitAdvantage. And again, we're offering 10% discount offerings using discount code 1908 when you check out. Okay, and with that, let's get to some questions. So Jennifer, I think we'll queue up the questions. I'll try to answer whatever I can.
All right. Hi, everyone. This is Jennifer from Beat the GMAT. Thanks for joining today's session. Kofi offers some great information. So we do have some questions. I see them coming through the queue. If you do have a question for Kofi, please type it into the chat box and send it our way. So let's get started. All right. First question. How much of an impact can not only making an official school visit, but also creating relationships with current students and faculty make when gaining admission to a business school?
That's a good question. Typically, most schools have a way for admissions for current students to write a supplemental recommendation. It can be helpful in that sense. If you really know someone well, you may consider asking them to put in a good word for you, i.e., write something up, sending an email out to admissions can be great. Sometimes current students will help you out in the context of if you're waitlisted, they can go to an admissions officer and say, you really need to take a look at this person. Jennifer's a great candidate. I think professors, if you know them, and a relationship is not that you've talked to them. A relationship is that they know who you are. You have a rapport. Asking them to put in a good word, I think, can be very helpful as well. So let me put it this way. It's not necessary for you to have that to get into the school, but if you do have it, it can be a great enhancement, but you need to channel it. You need to direct them on what you want them to do. Like sort of telling them, hey, look, I applied to school. Thanks. If you can do something, that would be great. That's not as helpful as if you give them a clear, concise action. That's not a huge lift for them, but ask them to do just to let the admissions officer know you have someone that's co-signed on your canvas. So that can be pretty helpful.
All right. Thanks, Kofi. Here's another question. Is there any list of do's or don'ts a candidate should keep in mind after submitting an application?
Yeah, so don't reach out before you're supposed to be contacted and say, what's going on? There is going to be a period where you don't hear anything, okay? And reaching out to them saying, what's going on with my application? Well, I heard that some people got interviews granted to them. I haven't heard anything. What's up? Don't do that. Off the record, admissions officers will tell you that they find it highly annoying, and they kind of take notes on people that have done that. So do not do that. It is a good time. Visit the school. Do potentially, if you're going to reach out, send an update saying, hey, look, I just got promoted. Just wanted to let you know that. Or I just got involved in a new assignment. Just want to let you know that. If you have a meaningful update or contribution, definitely, get up and send an email to them. If you're visiting campus, say, look, I'm visiting campus, especially if you have related to the first question, you have a friend or a professor who can, make an introduction, say, I'm visiting campus, I'd love to just pop in and say hi. So do that kind of stuff, but, don't be hyper-aggressive and annoying because they'll remember, and that just lends credence to the argument of you being a little bit entitled. A lot of you are exceptionally talented, have great grades, great profiles, but you're not entitled. You're not entitled to a spot at any of these schools. So, don't think that you are, and don't behave as if you do.
No, really solid advice. Let's see. Here's another question. Is it frowned upon to wait until the deadline to accept or even decline admission?
No. No problem at all doing that. I mean, they'd obviously love to know early, but there's no problem. You're not going to be penalized by waiting until the last second to tell them that you want to go.
Okay. How much does the GMAT really impact your application?
I think the GMAT is more of an issue that can keep you out than help you get in. Most schools do look at you holistically. They are honest when they say that, But if you've got a GMAT that's considerably out of range, let's call it 70 plus points off the mean, you're going to be facing a real uphill battle to get in. So the GMAT's not going to get you in, but it's going to get you out. So for example, if you're applying to school, it's a 710, you've got a 710 mean and you get a 640, even a 650, you better have like some other really amazing things about your candidacy to be considered, because it's just, you're applying to schools, if you're applying to top 20, 25 schools, you're applying to schools where 70% of the people that apply are qualified, and yet only 10 to 25% get in. So if you took a pool of 20 people, 6 would have no chance. Bad GMAT, bad grades, bad GPA, or bad GMAT, bad grades, poor work experience, and 14 would be very good over the 14, 2 to 5 are getting in. Okay, so it's really a seller's market, unfortunately for you, and I guess for all of us. So you need to be careful about that.
Okay. How about work experience? How important is the length and quality?
I'd say the quality is more important than the length, but if you don't have exceptional quality, the length can really work to your favor. So if you're applying with 2 years of experience, for example, they better be outstanding 2 years. Like they better be a rock star. You need to have been promoted, new work assignments. You need to be that person that everyone in the company says, that's kind of the young high flyer. Like that's someone who's like on a mission, doing his or her thing. If you're more gradual with it, it's often good to apply after 3 to 5 years of experience, because it gives you more time to sort of get those accomplishments. So it's almost like a plane taking off. If you've got a very short runway, which represents very few years of work, that plane needs to be accelerating at a very high pace, as opposed to, in order to sort of take liftoff by the time it gets to the end of the runway. As opposed to if you have more runway, then you don't have to move accelerating that quickly. And that's really how you should think about your career versus the time versus kind of the accolades and the quality of the work experience.
Okay. I have a few questions about the letter of recommendation. So the first one deals with who should give a recommendation. Can it be a current boss or a colleague? Will that do?
Yes. So a boss, well, those are different. So typically a boss is expected. If you're not going to have a boss do it, then you need to write an optional essay why that's the case. And, and that could be okay. Obviously, for a lot of you working in finance or related fields, you have your bonus coming up, right? And so, and just having a job. So you may not have told your boss because your boss knows you're leaving. Why they may not reward you. He or she may not reward you. A peer you shouldn't do. A true peer. I don't mean like an associate, someone that's 3 or 4 years older than you that you're close to. They still have that kind of seniority. But a true peer, someone that started with you maybe within a year of you, they should not be writing a recommendation unless it's asked. Now, if you're coming from a place where, let's say you're an entrepreneur, you may have a fellow co-founder write it. You may have a supplier write it. You may have your lawyer or your investor write it. I mean, there are different things you can do, but typically I'd avoid peers unless you have to.
How about the authenticity of a recommendation? How is that validated? Do universities generally contact the recommenders?
Typically they don't, but they do ask you to verify that it's true. And typically they spot, like almost like the airport, they will basically spot check a subset of the applications and run background checks on them and go through. And if you lie, they will rescind your application. And typically that's enough, rescind your decision. Typically that's enough to scare most people straight. I would not lie about that.
Okay, let's see. This is a question. Looks like the student is from India with a 710 GMAT and aim at top B schools. Should they focus on having a good application now in R2, or should they focus on increasing their GMAT and apply next year?
A 710 from an Indian candidate is kind of at that inflection point. I would say probably, I would still apply. So, if I had a 710 and I had really good work experience and good grades, and I was an Indian candidate and I was applying to top tier schools, I probably would still apply this year. But realize that, you may not get in, you have to apply next year. But there are many Indian candidates on top tier campuses who have 710, 720 GMAT scores. So it's not like everyone is a 770, but you're probably at a slight disadvantage. And certainly if you're applying to super top tier school, 710 is actually below the mean for every top 5 to top 10 school right now. That wasn't the case like 8 to 9 years ago, but today it is. But that's a good enough score where I'd still give it a shot, provided the other stuff was in order.
All right, here's another question. Are scholarships available for top leading business schools? If so, what are the criteria that is generally considered?
Yeah, we kind of covered that. So most top-tier schools don't give scholarships or fellowships to a lot of people because they've got, quote-unquote, so many qualified candidates who are accepted. However, you will find scholarships that typically involve corporate partners that they work with or you have to go outside for. So I mentioned the Goldman Fellowship at Wharton, and they do it at other schools. You know, our friend that got it, it was done through Wharton. But basically, they told Wharton, you know, accepted students who are really strong, you should make them aware of this fellowship, and then, you know, they'll apply, and we'll probably award maybe one or two to people at Wharton, and maybe probably one or two to people at Stanford and Columbia and Harvard, et cetera, et cetera. And I mentioned to you that fellowship that was given by the HBS alum who worked in retail, who wanted to basically give money to people. And so every year they gave $20,000 or $20,000. They get $450,000 approximately every year for promising HBS accepted students who were going into retail or coming from retail. So those fellowships are typically available, but they're done through sort of affiliate groups or affinity groups related to the specific school. Most schools don't give huge fellowships from their own pockets up front. Sometimes they'll give it to you if you've done well academically heading into your second year. But if you're applying to a top-tier school, you need to assume that you're probably going to have to take loans. So you definitely have enough money to go. But the question is, are you getting loans or are you getting fellowships? You should assume that you're going to get loans, and that's just kind of the cost of doing business, going to one of those schools.
This is a call for some more questions. Questions are looking a little light, so if you do have questions, please send it our way. Ask it to them, and we can get you your answer. All right, here is a question.
Jennifer, I can't hear you that well.
Oh, can you hear me now?
No.
No?
You're a little bit, you sound a little distant.
Okay, how about that? Is that better?
No, but I'll listen. Go ahead. It's okay. I'll listen.
All right, let's see. What tips can you give for a reapplicant?
For a reapplicant, I think the biggest thing is being able to indicate how you've changed, how you've improved, right? So, and being holistic about that. So let's say that you applied last year and you had a bad GMAT, but everything else was great, and you're reapplying this year. The two things I'd tell you: one, you need to sort of speak about your GMAT specifically, but also indicate all the other ways that you've progressed. So obviously your GMAT last year was a huge problem point, but you don't want to seem like you're not moving forward in any other dimension other than your GMAT. So you need to highlight your GMAT, but then focus on the other stuff that's happened. So more promotions, more advancement, more leadership. Even if it's just a continuation, you definitely want to mention that, in addition to hopefully a better GMAT score. I think secondly, you don't want to apply as a totally new candidate, meaning you don't want to apply last year, you want to get into private equity, and this year you want to do manufacturing, right? There needs to be some kind of consistency. I'm not saying you have to want to do the same exact thing, but they need to be tied together. And if you've evolved, you need to indicate how and why you've evolved in terms of what you want your career pursuit to be.
Is there a way that this PowerPoint could be available? We are recording today's session, so that will be available on the we generally upload that within a week of the live.
Okay. Jennifer, I really can't hear you. Hold on a second. I'm going to actually. Okay, go ahead.
All right. I was just saying, just waiting on a few more questions to kind of come through.
Okay.
Any questions that maybe you have for our audience members, or what's the talking point?
You mean on my behalf, for me?
Yeah.
I'd love to know, I mean, just by maybe a show of hands, like how many people are waiting for, how many people are round one applicants, just type in yes if you're around one applicant. So I'm curious how many people are around one applicant versus round two. If you're around an applicant, just type in yes. I'd love to know, get a feel for that. Got a couple people? And versus how many of you are around two?
I got one that said there are two.
Okay. Yeah, no, look, I think we covered most of the material. I mean, the main point, really overarching theme of this presentation is that the decision that you have is just kind of, you need to take a couple of days, obviously, to celebrate or sort of to mourn, but it's just the beginning, right? It's just the beginning of your process, and the really effective people coming out of business school are the people that use this time well and take advantage of it. You can still use this time and still get a break, but you shouldn't say, well, I applied to business school, I got in, let's say, thinking most optimistically, I got in, I'm not going to worry about anything regarding it until July. If you're doing that, you're putting yourself at a competitive disadvantage to your peers who are using this time well, right? That's really the most important piece of information I want people to take away from this.
Okay, we are getting some more questions in.
Okay.
What are the main factors students should consider, or students should consider when deciding on a full-time program versus a part-time?
I think what the key critical main factor is, are you looking to switch careers, and kind of what's the value of an internship, right? So if you're doing a part-time program, you're trying to switch careers, you just need to understand that the career service office at most of these schools is really geared towards full-time people because they've taken sort of the most risk, and they're the ones that literally are incurring debt every single day they're in school, and they need to find a way to sort of pay that back and service that debt and get on with their career. So, we generally recommend full-time programs for people that are looking to switch careers, switch industries. That's a good bet for you. If you are someone that sort of knows where you want to go, I literally was just talking to someone 15 minutes before I hopped on this, where he was in energy. He wants to stay in energy. If you're sort of in that place where you're either in a company and or an industry in which you want to stay, then a one-year program can be totally, a one-year or a part-time program can work because you don't necessarily need that full immersion. You don't need that. You don't need that internship, and it allows you to sort of take less risks financially, i.e., you're still working, or you're only giving up 1 year of salary versus 2 years. That can be a very good choice. But you should realize that two-year programs are kind of the standard, and typically they're better at building the long-term relationships with, deeper relationships with fewer classmates, as well as more relationships with more classmates, and you'll get in a 1 year part-time program. And as you get out of school, that can be very helpful when you're looking to switch careers, raise money for a startup, et cetera. Having those kinds of relationships, 5, 10, 15 plus years out, that can be much more beneficial than just the training you got in your program.
Another question. Can you give some small examples of candidates who show that they have researched the program well?
Do I have examples of candidates that have researched programs well? Yeah, look, I think the candidates that have researched programs well have done a lot of the things that we talked about in the presentation. So they have, they've obviously looked at the website, they've visited schools, they've gone to classes in which they want to, in areas in which they want to study. They've built relations with different students on campus. They know people in admissions, so they've gone to sort of admissions events in their home cities and or gone to events on campus, met an admissions officer and stayed in touch with them. They're emailing them, once a quarter. They're giving meaningful updates to the point where when they apply, they're capable of sending an email to an admissions officer and saying, hey, look, I just applied. Thanks for all the help. And they get a good response back in fairly short order saying, great, we'll look for your application. They can mobilize, current students to help them say, hey, I applied to school, put in a good word, and say, yeah, I'll definitely do that. I'll pop in admissions tomorrow. Those are the people that are taking advantage of the research and kind of communications process before they apply pretty well.
A couple of profile-specific questions that you take. Let's see. Here's one from a student who says, considering a full-time MBA next year when they'll be 40. They have 15 years of experience in marine engineering. Is that a good choice, or should they perhaps go for a part-time instead?
Okay, I couldn't hear the last part of your question, but I got the gist of it. So it's an old. We had an older candidate a couple years ago, who was about in her early 40s. I don't want to give too much information on her, but essentially she was in that same position saying, look, I want to switch careers. I'm in my early 40s, I think 42, 43. I'm actually age-wise maybe a better fit for an executive program or a part-time program, but professionally, for what I want to do, I'm actually a better fit for the full-time 2-year program. What I would say for this candidate is that most business schools will try to funnel you into a part-time or executive program. You're going to have to really be clear about why you need a 2-year program. You're also going to have to be clear in terms of soft skills about how you're going to fit into a program where, you're going to be in class with like 25 through 27 or 28-year-olds on average, and indicating that you're excited to be about part of that culture. You're not going to be sort of a know-it-all. You believe that a 25 to 28-year-old has meaningful ways to actually help you and shape you, and that you've done some research and you're not picking industries where, they're not going to hire a 40 to 41-year-old associate or summer intern. You've got to make sure that you've done that research. I think the best case scenario, which this candidate did, was she indicated that, look, I know why I need this degree. I'm super excited about learning from other people. Here's how I think they're going to be able to help me, and I'm going to be able to find a job. I'm going to use the career service office, but the reality is I have my own set of networks and contacts and people that are saying, look, if you get an MBA, you're going to be able to come work in our company or our industry, no problem. Because schools are definitely afraid of having candidates they can't place. And the unspoken, off the record, now this being taped, conversation is that there's some firms that are not going to hire someone who's in their 40s to come take a job. I would argue it's not fair, but firms where you're sort of traveling like crazy, you're working super long hours. I mean, they're going to be sensitive to that if they feel like you've got a family and kids and responsibilities, which may preclude you from just being able to sort of do that and be moved, with a month's notice. They're going to be a little bit wary of that, right? And so they may think it's kind of weird that, you're an associate and you're reporting to a 35-year-old, 37-year-old managing director, right, or senior VP. So you've got to really indicate why a full 2-year program makes sense for you. You have to indicate what you think you're going to learn from your peers, and you have to sort of make them feel comfortable with the job placement aspect of it. Jennifer, I think I took out my headphones. I think there's a microphone issue maybe on your side.
Let's see. Yeah, I'm using.
That's much better. That's much better. Go ahead.
Can you hear better? Okay, perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, this is probably going to be our last question. This one is from a student who says, in my career plans question, I wrote to schools in R1 that I am interested in a career in impact investing, a very niche sector in the long term, and that in the short term I'm interested in business process improvement consulting. I wrote this because I believe that the career prospects are not great in impact investing now. I still believe that impact investing does not have great career opportunities now. What's your advice for me while applying to schools in R2?
I'm okay with that setup. I think the critical thing is indicating what are the specific skills, experiences, contacts / relationships, and credibility that you're going to take from business process consulting that are going to be relevant to help you break into and be successful in impact investing, right? So you don't want the admissions office feeling that the job or career that you're pursuing for the first 2 to 5 years after you graduate, that's going to be totally irrelevant towards the career that you're going to pursue 5+ years. And that's a risk you run. If you don't explain that connection, if you don't explain how knowing how businesses run, how they operate, looking at a variety of different industries, if you can't articulate how it's going to be relevant for, your career in impact investing, and or how it's going to help you break into that field, then that's going to be, a combination that's not a winning one for you. So you've got to really be clear about how you make that transition.
Thanks, Kofi. Well, that looks like that was our last question before we wrap up here.
Okay, excellent. So I wish you guys and ladies all well. Happy holidays to all of you. Reach out if you need help, and definitely check us out on Admit Me. If you have feedback, we'd love to hear it. You guys are our first users, our base. We got a couple thousand people there already, and we'd love to see more of you to give us feedback on how we can make it better. All right?
Wonderful. Thanks, Kofi. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Okay. Happy holidays, and let's go Ohio State. Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.